Hey folks, Mitch Lum here. I wanted to discuss some thoughts on materials for tops. In particular, I want to talk about my bias against aluminum and how I've changed my perspective on aluminum as a performance-oriented material for tops. So let's start with the source of my bias. I've been a custom knife collector since about 2000. In custom knives, you don't see knife makers using aluminum on anything. Aluminum's cheap, a cheap material that's made for mass production in factories. Instead, custom knife makers use titanium for things like liner or inlaid locks or frame locks, and Fellhelter uses titanium for his pens. When I started making tops in 2014, of course, after having made custom rings and pens for about 10 years, my first top was done in Thai as a one piece, this guy here. You can see it doesn't even have a bearing in it. And it was just a solid piece of titanium as my first top. My second top was Timascus. So again, a solid one piece top made in Timascus. So once I started going with my first couple of tops, I realized I needed a more dense material to get the center of gravity nice and low. For long spinning tops in general, what you want is a dense outer ring or body and a very lightweight core or stem to get the center of gravity super low. And for performance-oriented tops, I started using copper with titanium stem or silicon bronze with titanium stem. Eventually, I also integrated tungsten as my highest performing materials combination because tungsten has a density more than twice that of copper. But I really resisted using aluminum on anything. Intellectually, I knew that the lower density of aluminum would improve the theoretical performance of my tops, but my bias against the cheap material, I resisted. So in the last year, I started to reflect on the source of the resistance I had against aluminum and started to rethink my bias. So two things really crystallized my current thinking on the use of aluminum. The first one was TopCon 2016 and the 15-gram maker challenge that we did. And then the other one is custom flashlights. So for the inaugural TopCon in June of 2016 in Atlanta, I set up a 15-gram maker's challenge. So all the makers really, like physics dictates your longest spin time, especially on a super lightweight top. So all the makers were using titanium or some other tungsten or some other material that was even more dense, and aluminum or even magnesium for the cores. It was pretty eye-opening for me to see how much more performance I got switching from a titanium core to an aluminum core with a tungsten body. This top here is a 22-gram top. It's 3/4 of an inch diameter, and it spun a smooth 13 minutes, like with an easy spin. Previously, with my titanium stems, I would have been pretty happy on that size of a top to get 11, 12 minutes, kind of a spin time. So in the world of EDC things, so that was TopCon. So really starting to make tops with an aluminum core sort of opened my eyes to the performance that you can get. And then in the world of EDC things, many things like custom lights are made out of titanium. This is a titanium center with a Texture Tech clip that I made for it. Titanium makes for really awesome, great lights, and when you've got your titanium light and your titanium pen and your titanium knives and your titanium top or your Timascus top, it all makes a lot of sense. So with lights, I really resisted purchasing anything custom in aluminum because that's what the mass production factories are doing. But I didn't understand, and I also didn't understand why makers were using copper, like on this Honko EX11. I mean, it looks cool, but copper, it's heavy and it can dent easily. And it's also really heavy. So here we've got a titanium center, a copper Honko, a brass Tim Miklos custom, and then a Overready Boss. So Randy Domingo and Dan Patnode really helped me change my thinking around materials for lights, which informed sort of my thinking about materials for tops. So with lights, it's all about heat dissipation. So while I love titanium for things like knives, pens, even tops, titanium is a terrible conductor of heat. And with these high-powered, super small lights, it's all about how quickly and how much heat can you dissipate from the head into the body. So titanium is actually a pretty terrible performing material from the thermal perspective, whereas copper is really great. For things like lights, copper and brass actually have sort of a high thermal mass as well as a great thermal conductivity. Aluminum is a really good second choice, and it's lighter in the pocket, but it has, you know, lower mass and lower thermal conductivity, but significantly higher than titanium. So this kind of brings me full circle in my bias against aluminum. So when I think about what is the purpose of the material for the thing that it's going on, whether that's on a knife, on a pen, on a light, on a top, it's really thinking about that material in its own context, not relative to other things. So just because I wouldn't buy a custom knife with an aluminum handle doesn't mean that aluminum isn't a really great choice for a custom light. So similarly, if I'm thinking about performance of one of my tops, aluminum is actually a really great choice for a core material. So I'm really just letting go of my bias against aluminum. In tops where performance is more important than, you know, what I deem as cool factor, I'm going to use 7075 aluminum instead of titanium. It's both easier to work and finish, and also gives a better spinning top. I'm still going to focus on what I think are the coolest materials out there, namely Timascus and Black Timascus from Alpha Knife Supply. See if you can see that one. This one's basket weave Timascus and Black Timascus core. So I'm still all about the cool materials, but when I'm thinking about performance, I'm really accepting now that 7075 aluminum, or aluminum in general, is actually a really good material option for using on cores and tops. So anyway, that was my thoughts. Hopefully it wasn't too rambly, but I hope you also guys, you enjoyed it. Thanks.